Hi, I am Dr. Sarah Collins, and before you scroll away, I want you to pause for just a moment because what you're about to hear could quietly shape the next 10 or 20 years of your life. This isn't just another talk about bad habits or self-control. This is about something most people over 40 are experiencing, but almost no one is talking about honestly. Ask yourself this very carefully. Are you really feeling the same spark, focus, motivation, and emotional connection you had years ago? Or does everything feel a little dull, a little flat, like something important is missing and you can't quite explain why? If you've ever felt emotionally numb, less interested in intimacy, less driven, or stuck in repetitive urges that don't even feel satisfying anymore, then stay with me, because in this video, you're going to understand exactly why this is happening and what you can actually do about it. In the next few minutes, I'm going to explain what's really going on inside your brain, why this issue is becoming more common after 40, and why willpower alone doesn't fix it. By the end, you'll know what this problem truly is about, how it quietly drains joy from everyday life, and why the solution is surprisingly simple but deeply uncomfortable at first. This isn't about shame. It's not about morality. It's about biology, habits, and a system in your brain that has been pushed far beyond what it was designed to handle. Many people think this struggle is about sex, desire, or pleasure, but that's not the real story. What's actually being affected is your ability to feel anticipation, excitement, and meaning. Over time, repeated artificial stimulation trains the brain to crave intensity while dulling real-life experiences. For adults over 40, this hits even harder because the brain is already more sensitive to stress, sleep loss, and hormonal shifts. The result is a cycle where urges get stronger, satisfaction gets weaker, and relationships, confidence, and motivation slowly erode. You might notice that real intimacy feels slower or less engaging than it used to, while quick stimulation feels almost automatic. That's not a personal failure. That's conditioning. The brain learns patterns extremely well, especially when dopamine is involved. Dopamine is not pleasure itself. It's the drive, the pull, the anticipation that says, "Do this again." When that system is overstimulated for years, the brain protects itself by turning the volume down. And when the volume is down, nothing feels quite as good anymore. This is why so many people over 50 say they feel disconnected from their partner, less emotionally responsive, or strangely restless even when life is stable. The brain has been trained to chase spikes instead of depth. And here's the part most people don't realize. The brain can recover. The receptors can reset. The system can calm down. But only if you understand what you're dealing with and stop fighting it the wrong way. In the next part, I'm going to explain exactly how this cycle forms over time, why it escalates, and why traditional advice fails people in this age group. Stay with me, because once you see the pattern clearly, the way out becomes much easier to follow. Now let's slow this down and really look at how this cycle quietly builds, especially after 40. Most people don't wake up one day addicted or emotionally numb. It happens gradually, almost invisibly. At first, the stimulation feels exciting, then comforting, then familiar. Over time, the brain starts to expect it. What once felt optional becomes automatic. And the older you get, the harder this pattern grips you. Not because you're weaker, but because your brain has had more years to learn it. Inside your brain, there's a system designed for survival. It's meant to motivate you to seek food, connection, purpose, and intimacy. But modern stimulation floods this system with intensity it was never designed to handle. The brain responds the only way it knows how. It adapts. It reduces sensitivity. That means you need more stimulation just to feel normal, not even good, just normal. And real life, which is slower and unpredictable, starts to feel boring by comparison. For people over 40, this creates a very specific kind of frustration. You might still want connection, intimacy, and closeness, but your body and mind don't respond the same way. Desire fades faster. Focus drops quicker. Emotional reactions feel muted. This isn't aging itself. This is desensitization layered on top of aging, which makes everything feel heavier than it should. What makes this cycle especially dangerous is that it feeds on stress and fatigue. And let's be honest, after 40, life usually comes with more responsibility, more pressure, less sleep, and less time to recover. When the brain is tired, it reaches for the fastest relief available. Not the healthiest, not the most meaningful, just the fastest. That's how the loop tightens. Another key point most people miss is escalation. What worked before stops working. The brain wants novelty. It wants intensity. It wants variety. That's why urges grow stronger while satisfaction shrinks. It's not that you want more. It's that your brain feels less. This gap creates restlessness, irritability, and that constant sense of something being off, even when nothing is obviously wrong. You might notice this spilling into other areas of life. Less patience, less drive, less enjoyment from hobbies you used to love, more distraction, more procrastination. This isn't random. When the brain is stuck in a high-craving, low-reward state, it struggles to enjoy simple things. Everything feels like effort. And here's where most advice goes wrong. People are told to fight urges, distract themselves, stay busy, or rely on willpower. That might work for a short time, but it doesn't fix the root problem. In fact, constantly fighting can make the urge louder. The brain interprets resistance as importance. The truth is, this cycle doesn't break through force. It breaks through regulation. The brain needs space to recalibrate. It needs quiet. It needs the absence of stimulation long enough to remember what normal feels like again. In the next part, I'm going to explain the one state most people avoid at all costs, yet it's the exact state the brain needs to heal. It's uncomfortable, it's boring, and it works when nothing else does. Stay with me, because this is where the real shift begins. Now we come to the part most people resist, avoid, or misunderstand completely. This is the turning point. The state that feels like the enemy, but is actually the cure. Boredom. Not the passive kind where you scroll your phone or keep the TV on in the background. I'm talking about intentional, uncomfortable, quiet boredom. The kind where there is nothing to distract you from your own thoughts, urges, and restlessness. For someone over 40, this can feel especially intense. You're used to being productive. You're used to staying busy. Sitting still can feel like wasting time or losing control. But what's really happening in those quiet moments is the brain finally gets a break from constant stimulation. And that break is exactly what allows the system to reset. When an urge shows up, most people react instantly. They fight it, argue with it, distract themselves, or give in. All of those responses keep the brain activated. They keep dopamine high. But if instead you sit with the urge, without feeding it and without trying to escape it, something very different happens. The urge rises, peaks, and then falls. This is not theory. This is how the nervous system works. Think of the urge like a wave. If you chase it, it pulls you under. If you fight it, you exhaust yourself. But if you float, the wave passes. Each time you do this, the brain learns that the urge is not an emergency. It doesn't need action. Over time, the waves get smaller. This is why boredom is so powerful. Boredom removes anticipation. It removes excitement. And without those, dopamine levels begin to normalize. The brain stops screaming for stimulation and starts listening again. This is how sensitivity returns. This is how emotional depth comes back. At first, this process is uncomfortable. You may feel restless, irritated, even anxious. That's not failure. That's withdrawal from overstimulation. For people in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, this stage can feel confronting because it exposes emotions that have been numbed for years. But this is also where healing begins. The key is not to time it or measure it. Don't count days. Don't obsess over progress. Every moment you sit through an urge without reacting is a win. The brain is rewiring in real time. And slowly, very slowly, real life starts to feel more engaging again. Conversations feel warmer. Music feels richer. Touch feels more real. Motivation returns, not as pressure but as natural energy. It's important to understand this is not about removing pleasure from your life. It's about restoring your ability to feel it naturally. When the brain is no longer overwhelmed, simple things become satisfying again. And for adults over 40, this can feel like getting a part of yourself back that you thought was gone forever. In the next part, we'll talk about how to support this reset in practical ways, by shaping your environment, your routines, and your daily habits so your brain isn't constantly pulled back into old patterns. Stay with me, because this is how you make the change last. Now that you understand why boredom is the most powerful tool, let's talk about how to reinforce this reset in your daily life. Because just sitting quietly isn't enough if your environment keeps pulling you back into old patterns. For adults over 40, the environment matters more than you might think. Small triggers, phones, tablets, social media, even casual browsing, can reignite years of conditioning in an instant. So the first step is to take control of what surrounds you. Remove temptations. Use blockers. Keep your devices out of private spaces where urges feel strongest. Think of it like decluttering your brain as much as your home. Out of sight isn't just out of mind. It's a way to protect the rewiring process. Next, your routines need to support dopamine normalization. Sleep, movement, and nutrition are not optional. Sleep allows receptors to recover. Even 1 extra hour can dramatically improve your brain's sensitivity. Exercise, especially strength training or resistance work, boosts natural dopamine and stabilizes mood. Diet matters too. Reducing refined carbohydrates and sugar helps prevent unnecessary spikes in stimulation. Instead, focus on nutrient-rich foods that support brain chemistry. Protein, healthy fats, and key minerals like zinc and magnesium, which are essential for dopamine production. Sunlight and outdoor activity are another underrated factor. Exposure to natural light resets circadian rhythms, improves mood, and helps the nervous system function optimally. For seniors, even short daily walks can make a difference in emotional responsiveness and energy levels. It's not about extreme effort. It's about consistent, small actions that reinforce the brain's recalibration. Being productive and engaged is important, but not as a distraction from urges. Instead, channel energy into meaningful tasks, projects, hobbies, social interaction that don't rely on instant gratification. This replaces artificial stimulation with real-life reward. Slowly, the brain begins to relearn pleasure from normal experiences instead of spikes. Every time an urge arises, you now have a 3-step approach. Acknowledge it, do not engage, and sit through the discomfort. Pair this with environmental control, healthy routines, and outdoor activity. Over weeks and months, this combination strengthens resilience and restores sensitivity. Remember, this is not a quick fix. Healing takes time, especially after decades of overstimulation. But the process works. Emotional depth returns. Desire for connection grows naturally. Motivation and focus improve. Life begins to feel fuller, richer, and more satisfying. You're not giving up pleasure, you're regaining it, authentically, without dependency on artificial spikes. In the final part, I'll summarize the key steps and give a clear daily framework for seniors to follow. This is your roadmap to lasting change, so you can feel engaged, alive, and in control of your own brain again. Stick with me because the transformation is achievable, and it starts now. Now let's bring everything together and give you a clear roadmap to reclaim control, especially if you're over 40 or 50. The first principle is understanding the problem. Repeated overstimulation desensitizes your brain's reward system, making real-life experiences feel dull, while artificial stimulation feels urgent and irresistible. Recognizing this is not about blame or shame. It's about seeing the biological patterns clearly so you can act effectively. The second principle is intentional boredom. This is the heart of the reset. When urges appear, don't run, don't fight, and don't distract yourself. Sit with them. Let them rise, peak, and then fall naturally. Over time, your brain relearns normal sensitivity. Simple pleasures like conversation, touch, music, or nature start to feel enjoyable again. This is how emotional connection, intimacy, and motivation return. The third principle is environment. Remove triggers. Phones, tablets, social media, or any source of quick artificial stimulation must be carefully managed. Create safe spaces where your brain isn't constantly pulled back into old patterns. Think of it as building a foundation for new habits. Without this, progress is much harder to maintain. The fourth principle is daily lifestyle. Sleep, movement, nutrition, and sunlight are not optional extras. They are essential. 1 extra hour of sleep, a short walk in natural light, strength training, and a nutrient-rich diet all reinforce dopamine recovery. Zinc, magnesium, and healthy fats are especially important for your nervous system to function optimally. Balance activity with quiet reflection, and prioritize tasks that bring authentic satisfaction instead of instant reward. The fifth principle is patience. Healing is gradual. Your brain didn't become desensitized overnight, and it won't reset overnight. But every moment you practice boredom, every day you maintain a supportive environment, every healthy habit you choose, you're rewiring your system. Motivation returns, desire returns, emotional depth returns. For seniors, this process is particularly powerful. Life over 40 brings wisdom, perspective, and the opportunity to rebuild habits with clarity. By intentionally applying these principles, you can reclaim vitality and engagement that may have felt lost for years. This is about living fully, not just avoiding urges. It's about strengthening your mind, your body, and your relationships simultaneously. Finally, remember that this is a lifelong skill. Your brain will always be tempted by quick spikes of stimulation, but with consistent practice, the intensity of those urges diminishes, and real-life connection becomes far more rewarding. The key takeaway: the cycle of overstimulation can be broken, but only by combining intentional boredom, controlled environments, supportive routines, and patience. Start today. Begin by observing urges without reacting. Adjust your environment. Prioritize sleep, movement, and nutrition. Engage with meaningful tasks and nature. Slowly, you will notice life feeling richer, more colorful, and more satisfying. Emotional connection returns. Focus returns. Motivation returns. And you realize that your brain, even after decades of conditioning, is capable of recovery. You are not stuck. You are not powerless. By following this roadmap, seniors over 40 and 50 can regain the emotional, physical, and cognitive vitality that modern overstimulation has quietly eroded. This is your chance to reclaim your life, and it starts with small, intentional steps taken consistently every day.